These books really are engines of fundamentalism. They are engines of intolerance. There really is a wrathful Jesus in the New Testament waiting to be found in 2 Thessalonians and in Revelation, where exactly the Jesus who we have in the Left Behind series of novels that 60 million people have bought. The Jesus of just fiery wrath who's going to throw people into the pit. Okay, that is there to be discovered. Nowhere in the book does it say, well, that's bogus. It's not an accident that people like St. Thomas Aquinas or St. Augustine, or really the people who are still taught as the great lights of the Western tradition. In Aquinas' case, he thought heretics should be killed outright. In Augustine's case, he thought they should be tortured. Augustine's argument for the use of torture laid the foundations for the Inquisition. This is not an accident, and it's perfectly reasonable. We have this idea that the fact that we were burning heretics alive for 5 centuries in Europe, this represented some kind of departure, a civilizational departure into psychopathology. It didn't. It is perfectly reasonable to do this if you believe the books. I mean, the heretic next door, given certain beliefs, is far more dangerous than the child molester next door. The heretic can say something to your child that will damn his soul for all time. Religious moderates lose touch with the fact that it's possible to believe this. And finally, the problem with religious moderation is that because it is constitutive of merely our relaxing our hold upon these ancient superstitions and taboos, because it doesn't call the basic project of affiliating yourself with these traditions into question. It doesn't call into question the project of venerating these books to the exclusion of any other books. Because it doesn't, it prevents us from developing modern 21st century alternatives, really bringing the full measure of our creativity to bear on questions of human happiness. Now, this link between religion and morality that really is everywhere in our culture, and which really underwrites religious moderation and religious fundamentalism to a significant degree. This idea that without religion, something fundamental would be lost to us in moral terms. This really is questionable when you look at the books. The truth is that not even, just to speak specifically of the Bible for a moment, not even an Orthodox Jew or a fundamentalist Christian can take God at his word, given how sadistic God is in books like Leviticus and Deuteronomy and Exodus. I mean, if you were going to draw your to-do list out of a book like Leviticus, you would make Mullah Omar of the Taliban look like Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I mean, it's just, it paints a vision of life so needlessly horrible, so subversive of the basic project of creating a sustainable society where human happiness is even possible, that we effectively have edited the Bible. Even fundamentalists have. But it's important to point out that nobody ever says these passages are immoral. I mean, the idea that you find that a woman is not a virgin on her wedding night and you stone her to death. You stone homosexuals to death. If your kids talk back to you, you stone them to death. If you go into a town and you see someone praying to a foreign god, you kill him, you kill his family, you kill everyone in the town. Okay, these are not metaphors. These are not analogies for some spiritual struggle within. These are explicit directives to kill people for theological crimes. No one ever says this is immoral. Christians just say we don't have to do this anymore because Jesus brought us the doctrine of grace. Well, incidentally, Jesus also said that every jot and every tittle of the law has to be fulfilled. So the inquisitors of the Middle Ages had a rationale for practicing this kind of law. And I can assure you that St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas had read the Sermon on the Mount. they managed to square the ministry of Jesus with their impulses to kill people for thought crimes. I mean, if this is the best book we have, from the point of view of fundamentalism, the Bible is the best book we have, or the Quran is the best book we have, because it's literally been dictated by the creator of the universe. From the point of view of moderation, these are the best books we have, but who knows what their source is. Just the smartest people who ever lived wrote these books, say. If the Bible is the best book we have in the West, in ethical terms, we should be practicing slavery. The creator of the universe clearly expects us to keep slaves. He simply tells us not to beat our slaves so severely that we put out their eyes or their teeth. Jesus clearly expected us to keep slaves. He never criticizes the institution of slavery. He uses analogies with slaves. Paul, in 1 Timothy, admonishes slaves to serve their masters well and to serve their Christian masters especially well, so that they can partake in their holiness. The abolitionists were absolutely on the wrong side of the theological debate. If this is the wisest book we have, the slaveholders of the South were right. And on so many other questions, this is true. If this is the wisest book we have, we should be beating our children with rods. It says in Proverbs. Incidentally, fundamentalist Christians in our country are beating their children with rods. Last year alone, in Alabama, 40,000 kids were paddled in their schools. It's legal to do this. This is a faith-based initiative. It's important for us to recognize that we decide what is good in the good book. We cherry-pick these books based on our own ethical intuitions. All we have to decide questions of ethics are our own ethical intuitions and the ethical intuitions of others who we are in conversation with. You can put your faith in a 21st century conversation about ethics, or you can put your faith in a first century conversation as preserved in these books. And the problem of faith really is that it is a conversation stopper. As long as you don't have to give reasons for what you believe, you have effectively immunized yourself against the power of human conversation. I mean, you hear religious people say things like, there's nothing you can say that will change my mind. I mean, just imagine that said in medicine. If there's nothing that can be said that will change your mind, if there's no evidence or argument that can be adduced, that proves that you are not taking any state of the world into account in your beliefs. The problem with this is that when the stakes are high, we have a choice between conversation and violence. At the level of society, we have a choice between conversation, negotiation, and war. The only willingness to take on and consider new evidence and new argument guarantees that this human collaboration is open-ended. Only that willingness guarantees that. Religion is the one area of discourse where we have made a fetish of a very different frame of mind. And this leads to two kinds of violence, two kinds of conflict. I mean, first we can concede that there are other sources of human conflict. There would be wars without religion. There's tribalism, there's nationalism, there's racism, ethnic rivalry. But there's no kind of us-them thinking that really makes a transcendental object of the differences between in-group and out-group. I mean, the difference between you and your neighbor is not merely skin color, it's not merely language, it's not merely politics, it's not merely that you want his belongings. It's that this difference, this means something for eternity. And so what you have are populations of people who organize their moral identities around their religious affiliation, whether or not they care so much about the theological details. And this leads to conflict when a society is stressed. Over and over again, we see societies breaking